Hello, I'm Riley, and this is the Diegetic Advancement Podcast. Okay, welcome to another midweek episode. I've got a few call-ins to go through, and I feel like splitting them up into a separate shows, keeping the episodes a little bit more manageable in terms of length. So today I've got calls from Joe from the Hindsightless podcast, Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and Barry from A Song of Dice and Shadows. I'm just going to let them take it away. First up is Joe.
Hey Riley, I just got finished listening to your discussion that you had with Merc and Jason about your play-by-post war game, and I was so glad to hear that you did that because I was hoping that you would do something like that. So thank you. It sounded like you got some really good feedback and that everybody had fun. That's the most important thing. And just good stuff, man. It's cool that you did something like that and it got you inspired and it got you playing and it got you having fun. Awesome, awesome stuff, man. Anyway, that's it for me. Take it easy. Peace out.
Hey, thanks for the call, Joe. I'm glad you enjoyed the episode. It was a ton of fun to record, and I got some more valuable feedback. And yeah, I'm super glad that I got the game up and running. And to be honest, it was fairly easy. I slapped together a pretty simple set of rules and a scenario, and just started playing. So if anyone's listening and wants to play more games, just go out and do it. Sure, it's not the same as a weekly 3-hour RPG session, but you can play more games. And yeah, I'm really glad that I did it, and I hope to continue. Thanks again for the call. And next up, I have Barry. Take it away.
Hi Riley, it's Barry here again. Just been listening to your conversation with Merc and Jason around your war game. A couple of things kind of sprang into my head, which I thought I would share. It was interesting hearing about the way the mechanism worked, where they had to go back to base at the end of every turn and thinking about options about how that could be different. I wonder if it's worth thinking about some sort of mechanism whereby they have to take supplies with them. Maybe they have to take supplies from a base, and that's how long they can stay out of the base until those supplies run out. Don't know if that adds too much complexity. If they fill up their inventory with food, then they can't get as many resources, which means if they're attacked, they might not be carrying back as much stuff, etc. That kind of thing. Also, there's scope there then to have other runners, kind of like smaller units of troops moving food to them. I don't know if that's again more complexity, but it'd be a fun thing. You could ambush people's supply lines to try and force them back to their base, for example, to get them away from places. But again, as a GM, it's about whether you want that much level of detail in the game you're running. Other thing I wanted to mention was around talking about Discord server. Definitely recommend having a Discord server. One of the things you could do, again, I like to add complexity to these things, is that if you have a channel dedicated to each player, like for their nation, for example, that only you and they have access to, you could even put in maps that only shows what they see. So you don't have to have a global map. So you can maybe have a map showing the area that they're aware of, and as they explore, show their area and have that saved there, because you can make sure that the players don't have permissions. Just a thought, but again, it's about how much level of detail, how much complexity you want to put in. But I thought those things just kind of popped into my head. I had a Discord server when I tried to run the sort of semi-computer moderated game. I did a Far Horizons game I tried to run for a while, but had to stop doing it at the end just because of time commitments, mostly because the computer moderated system was a bit buggy at times, or at least the way it read emails was a bit buggy. And in some ways, probably doing it human moderated would have been easier than computer moderated, but hey, that's just my thoughts on that one. Certainly if you've got a program that's not very well running and your programming skills aren't great. So yeah, I just wanted to drop that in there anyway, but I'll stop talking now. It's been a couple of minutes and I should probably stop rambling. So take care, Riley, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for the call, Barry. Yeah, supply lines. This tends to be an important thing in war and wargaming. And with the current loop of the game, units would have to go back home when they've filled up on their resource they're gathering, assuming I removed the arbitrary end. But that's not a guaranteed part of future games. And even if it was, the idea of running smaller units back and forth to support, a large force is really interesting. Again, I think it cements the fact that future games won't have that arbitrary requirement to return back home. There's a lot more strategy and room to be creative that comes out of removing it, and I'm sure there'll be some more interesting play that comes out of it. As for using Discord, yeah, that's definitely the way to do it. I run a couple of play-by-post games, and I use Discord for those. They're really handy to organize games like this, separate channels for players, shared space, being able to share text and images and all sorts of stuff. I think in the future on maps, I don't want this to be terribly burdensome for players or myself. But I think using like a VTT with the token based line of sight, that way I can just move the tokens around and take screenshots to share with the players. Even if I play with pen and paper like I did the last game, I can always go back in and quickly throw something together to share. Yeah, I'm glad that people are enjoying listening to that episode, and thank you for the call. And next up, I've got another call from Barry and one from Jason that are similar, so I'm just going to play those together and respond.
Hi Riley, it's Barry here. Just finished to listen to one of your previous episodes, and when Colin was talking about Phoenix Command and hit locations, and it just reminded me to mention Jason Nerds RPG Variety Cast mentioned before about TriTac games, and he got me interested in it from a game called Fringeworthy, which is effectively Stargate SG-1 before Stargate came out. But that's the kind of an aside. The interesting thing about it is in the complex combat system. First of all, you don't need a D1000 for complex hit locations because it uses D100s and D66 tables, our favourite little tables, kicking around, and can get very granular as to where you hit. But what's even better about that particular system is that if you use the advanced rules, there's also descriptors for, it's like these little damage tracks where when you hit someone, it shows you external tissue that you hit, then a bone rating and how much damage the bone absorbs before you go through the bone, then if there's any major organs under there, what they are and how much damage they take before you penetrate through those, and then potentially arteries you might hit which cause bleeding wounds, and if you go through those you then got bleeding risks, and then after that there's more bone potentially on the other side that you then go through before you exit from the other side. And I look at it thinking I'll never run this because it's far too complicated. It would take far too long every time we roll to hit to work out how much damage we do. But another part of me thinks it's absolutely amazing and cool, and I would love to run it in some ways, just because the level of detail you get from it. And I seem to remember with that one as well that if you shoot someone like, say, Sidon, you hit the arm. If you go through the arm with a weapon, it will then carry on and hit them in the chest, etc. I just want to put it out there. I'm not sure it's anything you'd ever use, but it just reminded me a bit. And I guess it's the thing with things like Phoenix Command and the TriTac games is that, there's all these things where you can get these lovely complex specific things, but again, would they run that well when you're playing a game? How much you want to slow down your game for doing damage? But hey, I do look at them and they do look pretty cool. I do love the idea behind them. Reminds me of games like Battletech and stuff when we used to have that. Another game we used to have called Leviathan by Facet as well, where you did very detailed damage through armor and stuff, which I kind of loved. I do kind of like those things, but again, it's about how much detail you want to get into. So yeah, anyway, on that note, I shall carry on catching up with your podcast. Speak to you soon.
Hey Riley, Jason here. Listen to episode 17. It's interesting. So I was out of D&D before 2nd edition came out, but I think what you're describing sounds like what I understand 2nd edition individual initiative to work like. Honestly, at that point, I would just go to Hackmaster. The current edition of Hackmaster, I think maybe it's listed as Hackmaster 5e, you can get the basic rules for free, I believe, off drive-through. Or maybe you could just go to Kenzerco's site themselves. But Hackmaster has a count-up system that works very well, and it's worth looking at. Personally, for me, for Gygaxian D&D, combat is abstract, and this is taken away from that abstractness, so it's adding complexity that I don't want in my D&D. So I'm not interested in this. But for people that are, it's worth exploring. But I would look at the Hackmaster, what they've done with it, and see what you think there. So hope that helps. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
And thank you both for the calls. Firstly, on Jason's call, Gygaxian D&D combat as abstract, which I definitely like. Keeps it quick and punchy. Sometimes I do find it can limit some options, especially in equipment. Beyond movement speed, there's very little reason for a fighter to not wear plate, shield, and a sword until they get magic items, and that choice is kind of forced on them by that being kind of the better option. But what I presented in speed-based initiative is that's much too cumbersome to fit into an abstract combat system that I would like. If I was looking for a game with more complexity and detail around combat, I think Hackmaster is a good shout. I haven't played it, but it looks to fit the bill. And on Barry's call, I love hearing about these systems, Hackmaster, Phoenix Command, from the show you're referring to, and the info that you provided on the Tritac games. Uh, in an ideal world, it sounds really cool to have that much detail. Um, but as you say, I can't imagine that I'd be capable of running them smoothly. Might be a good candidate for a VTT. Um, I kind of prefer again a simple setup there, even when I'm playing online. But thank you for the recommendation. I love hearing about these types of games and um, mining them for little bits. I probably should play something like this um, soon to get an actual feel for it. But I'd love to figure out a way to simplify details like this and speed-based initiative down, so it is something fast and manageable for me at the table. All right, and to close us off, I've got a final call from Jason on my Mordheim episodes.
Hey Riley, Jason here. Enjoyed your latest episode. Yeah, Mordheim is interesting. When I had a break for RPGs, I actually got back in through skirmish games and RPG-like games like Mordheim and Necromunda and some of the newer American ones, things like 2 Hour Wargames and Songs of Blades and Heroes, of course, is Italian, not American. But just these different games, the talk about other countries, the Gangs of Mega City 1. We were actually looking at converting Gangs of Mega City 1 to a Gotham thing where you'd have like a Joker gang and a Penguin gang and a Riddler gang, and then using the mechanics in that game for the judges as like Batman, which would have been an interesting game. But no, I think these are interesting games. I don't know how. I don't know if I would try to import mechanics back and forth between these and role playing games. I don't think there's a problem doing that. But I kind of think a well built role playing game like say AD&D already kind of encompasses the options you get in one of these games to some degree. But I think they are interesting, and I think they could be a lot of fun. Online, of course, you have things like Tabletop Simulator, and you have other ways you can do this. In person, of course, this ties in with the minis painting hobby and building the terrain and building the buildings and all that kind of thing. But yeah, these small RPG light skirmish games will be a whole lot of fun, and I look forward to the continuing series. So take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the call, Jason. Yeah, Jason is referring to episode 16, where I started a continuing series of reading through the Mordheim campaign rules, and I'll have another episode of that out this weekend. Yeah, skirmish wargaming, a great way back into the hobby, broadly. As you mentioned, mini painting, terrain building, or just simply the act of playing. RPGs obviously came out of wargaming, where people wanted to focus in on just a single character, and skirmish games are in a way similar, where we're taking in the large scale war game and focusing in on a group, and you can kind of get some personification of the models rather than units in a line. Now, is there utility in porting rules from these games into an RPG? Well, we'll find out as I read through. Using that Gotham game that you mentioned sounds like a really cool way to build, as you mentioned, an RPG light kind of game. And I agree. There's a lot of campaign wisdom in AD&D, and that was my first choice to read through. But one, it's quite long, and two, legal or moral wise, I chose not to read that um, on the podcast. And whilst I don't think I'll pour any mechanics into an RPG, I might stumble upon some interesting ideas. We've talked about sort of this campaign game loop that is very similar already to a traditional D&D game, and even though Mordheim is definitely what people would describe as mudcore, the death and dying rules are significantly less punishing than BX. For one, it's arguable if they're less or more punishing than AD&D. But we'll see if there's any additional wisdom in this section of the book. And if not, I've learnt some campaign system stuff for the wargaming stuff that I'm trying to do. Again, thanks for the call and thanks for listening. Looking forward to continuing that series as well. That brings us to the end of the call-ins. I wanted to thank all of them again for calling in. Joe, Jason, and Barry. Again, all their details will be in the show notes. I would normally do a content shout out, but I can instead just tell you to go check out their podcasts. And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for listening. I'll have another podcast out this weekend with the Mordheim campaign system read through that I'm doing. But bye for now. I'd love to hear your feedback. You can reach me via Spotify, SpeakPipe, Discord, or email. Details, along with everything I've talked about today, are in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.